Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Munson, Superintendent of Schools in Marshall, and glad to kick off the 2019-2020 school year by talking about a couple of academic plans that we have in place and sort of taking a look back to the last school year, actually. We're going to talk about the World's Best Workforce Plan, our Achievement and Integration Plan, and probably just kind of weave a bunch of things in and out of there as we talk about student achievement in our school district and hopefully help you as a viewer understand some of the things that we have going on in our school district a little bit better. I'm joined today by Jeremy Williams, who is our Director of Teaching and Learning, has been in that role for a couple of years now after being an administrator at Westside Elementary and also at the high school and a teacher before that at the high school. So we're glad to have Jeremy here today. Jeremy, welcome. You want to just talk a little bit about yourself and your role, and then we'll jump right into the PowerPoint that we have.
Sure. Scott mentioned this. My second year now in this position as Director of Teaching and Learning. Had some previous administrative roles in the district, and just part of the role with this job is going through data, talking about where are we at, what are we doing, and what's going well in the district and where are some areas we can improve. So World's Best Workforce is a plan that guides that for us.
So when you started in your Director of Teaching and Learning role, I would anticipate that maybe one of the things you didn't really anticipate was spending quite as much time on some of the district plans that we have in place, and two of them being the World's Best Workforce and the Achievement and Integration Plan. I think what we'll do, Jeremy, is you can jump in at any time. We'll talk about the slides that Alex and Ryan are going to help us with in terms of this episode. But like it says here, the World's Best Workforce, which is in statute, I think it's been in place now for 6 or 7 years, where each school district needs to have a World's Best Workforce plan, and the plan has to have goals that are specific to the 5 things that are shown here on the screen. Those 5 things being all students ready for kindergarten. How are we going to do that? What are the goals? We'll talk about that. All students reading, all 3rd grade students reading at grade level. We both know through our work and research that that's a really important time period, 3rd grade. Closing achievement gaps. You and I talk frequently about different opportunities that we have to really improve our student achievement and some of the gaps that we have maybe for our special education students or our Black or Hispanic students or whatever. So we'll talk about that. The 4th goal being to graduate all students, and the last goal being to have all students career and college ready. Additionally, in the World's Best Workforce, other requirements are every school district has to have a long-term strategic plan. We do. We have it, as you know, Jeremy, 2017 through 2022 strategic plan. Focused on a lot of things, but certainly at the core of that plan is student achievement. We need to publish an annual report. We're in the process of working on our report for the 2018-19 school year right now, and we'll get that on the website, and that needs to be posted on our website. We'll be having a public meeting later on in, I think, late December or sometime, late November or December, inviting folks to come in and learn more about the World's Best Workforce and our Achievement and Integration Plan, and then we also are working on an annual summary report that we have to submit to the Department of Education. So just a little bit about the requirements for the World's Best Workforce. Jeremy, here's the first goal you want to kind of take and talk a little bit about really all students being ready for kindergarten, but talk us through what we have in our World's Best Workforce Plan and the result from last year.
Sure. Like you mentioned, this plan kind of guides everything we do. It goes from our preschool students all the way on through high school and graduating and being ready for college. And that's the thing about this, where we can connect to all the sites. Whereas we're setting goals at each site, we're talking about, are our students prepared? Are they ready for whatever's next? In preschool, they're ready for kindergarten, on through graduation, and then after that. So the first goal is ready for kindergarten. So we're working primarily with our preschool program in this one, early childhood programming, and talking about do they have those skills they need to be ready for kindergarten? One of the assessments they use at that level is called work sampling. It's an assessment that early childhood uses, measuring those early literacy skills with those kids. had a goal of 70% of students being proficient on those standards, and they have a number of action steps within that goal. So we have the district goal, and then each site has very specific action steps they're doing at their site related to that to help us gain that as a district. And then teachers even setting personal goals, talking about with very individual students, so it breaks down to that level. This one's looking at literacy. One of the challenges we had last year, we had a lot of snow days. I know when I was meeting with Tiffany Teske, our early childhood coordinator, we had 3-year-old students aren't in school 5 days a week, so we get some snow days and they're missing a lot of days. And some challenges with this assessment and measure was the 3-year-olds this last year. So the overall percentage wasn't exactly what we were hoping for, but our 4-year-old students are a little bit more. We had some really positive results there. So looking at what some better ways maybe with our 3-year-olds to measure progress, but we're still focused on those early literacy skills, and are they ready for what kindergarten's going to bring to them?
So 3 things that I'll just kind of segue and add in. One, we're in our 3rd year voluntary pre-kindergarten, where we're able to offer education to all 4-year-olds. So that's something that we're really taking a look at. Again, as you know. Secondly, the reason that the 3-year-old result has an asterisk by it is because we've learned that the work sampling is not a great way to assess 3-year-olds because it's intended for students who attend school all day, every day, and most of, if not all of our 3-year-old programs are half day and not every day. So like you said, we're going to look at something maybe different for that. On a positive here, even though we didn't necessarily meet our goal, 63% was the combined measurement for 3- and 4-year-olds. We did see that almost 75% of our 4-year-old students were proficient in the language and literacy standards, so that's good. Moving forward, we're going to continue to challenge ourselves and our staff to meet those. One of the things you talked about, Jeremy, the action steps in our World's Best Workforce Plan. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Because we're really giving a 30,000-foot view of what is in our plan, but talk just a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be only on the Ready for Kindergarten, but when you say action steps, what does that mean relative to the World's Best Workforce Plan?
Sure. So each school sits down and talks about where are we at on the goal, and then what are some specific things that site can do to make progress. An example might be making sure that the teachers at that level are comfortable with the learning standards. So that's for that level. Some best practice teaching strategies. We're doing a lot of work around literacy, because that's the goal that's up here, with doing small group instruction targeted to individual student needs. So giving the right assessments to find out what those needs are, and then teaching to that skill set to help students make growth. So those kinds of action steps.
And I think that's really important, because it's great to have this goal or these goals, as we're going to point out, but yet without actions and activities behind them, it's not very likely that we're going to be successful or as successful as we could be. And I think hopefully everybody knows that we do have, I'd say, pretty detailed action plans behind every one of these goals. And we've really sort of transitioned into something that we'll talk about in a while, trying to align many of our efforts and plans and be more deliberate with overlapping those, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's move on to the second goal, which Jeremy, with your background at Westside, again, I'll have you talk about this. Our goal as part of the World's Best Workforce to really focus on getting students to read well by 3rd grade. So go ahead and explain this a little bit.
Right, so read well by 3rd grade is saying that students are proficient by the time they're at 3rd grade, saying that's kind of, we've talked about that's a really important cut point, that to be successful later on in life, even at that 3rd grade being proficient. So we measure that using the NWA test. We have multiple measures that we can use for that. MCA is going to be the state test that you hear a lot of people talk about, that test that we give. The problem with MCA for our measures is we don't get results until later on in the year when we're reporting things back out, and teachers want to leave the year knowing how we did. So we use NWA. It's an assessment that we can use for all of our grade levels in the district, and it gives us results right away, so we can talk about those. Of course, we look at other measures as well, but looking at NWA, the goal for that grade was 67% would score at or above their grade level mean norm RIT score. What that's saying is NWA is given across the country, so that the average score of all 3rd graders across the country is going to be, whatever that score is, and we're norming our kids against that, saying that's what we're considering proficient, that they'd be at that level. So shooting for that, and we set each year, we take where that cohort of kids, so when they were second graders leaving the year, for them to grow at least 3%, another 3% of kids being proficient by the next year. We didn't hit that last year with that third grade group, and it's something, continued efforts within that literacy process at third grade, but all grades really. How are we making that growth? So we see different demographics of kids coming through with different needs, making sure we're meeting all those, and having interventions and aligned assessments that help us measure that and make growth.
And one of the things too, Jeremy, that I think it's helpful for our viewers to understand is when we talk about the grade level mean norm score, that means, like you said, nationwide 50% of, in this case, the third graders are below that score and 50% are above that score. So even though we didn't meet the goal to know that 62% of our third graders are above the mean score nationally is still pretty good. And we see really good numbers from all of our grades. But also, like you said, when we expect or want that group of students, that cohort, that graduating class to grow by 3%, we're challenging our staff, and they embrace that. I think at least that's been my experience.
Yeah, they do. It's something when we talk to NWA about some of our goals, they tell us we have very challenging goals for our kids, setting high expectations for our kids. So yeah, definitely something we always look at. So
moving on to achievement gaps, and I talked briefly about it during the beginning of this program, how we know that there are gaps between our say all students in a grade or school, and both in reading and math, and then maybe how special education students perform, or students who qualify for free and reduced lunch or whatever. One of the things that we've done in many of our plans is take a look at how our white students perform academically and our non-white students. And as you can see here, the achievement gap goal in our World's Best Workforce Plan is to reduce the gap from roughly 32% down to 29%. So meaning that our white students score 32% higher than our non-white students. And like we talked about, having action steps, interventions, different strategies, different pedagogical things that will help reduce that gap. Positively in 2018-19, that gap we shot for reducing to 29.4%, and the gap in reading, which is what we're measuring here, was 28.8%. We're happy with that, yet
we still have some room to go. We want to close that gap, and part of that is identifying. We look at achievement gap in a number of different ways. This goal is written on white versus non-white, but we look at other things too. It's how many of the students are not native English speakers. We have English language learners in there. How many have special needs, and identifying some of those subgroups as well. And this happens to be a measure we have here, but we have a number of areas we're looking at, and how do we continue to help kids grow, all kids at an individual level, to make growth. We talked a minute ago about the NWA, those norm scores. We don't only look at are they meeting that proficiency level, but are they making growth towards that proficiency level too. So a lot of measures we look at as we're talking about our kids being successful. So yeah, and even though this one has the thumbs up sign next to it, it's one of those things that we've never completed.
And I think a piece of this also is that this is our World's Best Workforce Plan, and we have site continuous improvement plans, we have literacy plans, we have other plans. So even though this particular plan and goal is focused on the gap between white and non-white students, we also work on some of those other achievement gaps in different plans and have action plans for those as well. So, so this is a positive for us in 2018-19. Obviously, one of the, I'll say, more measurable or visible goals that all districts have is graduation rate. That's something I know that the state of Minnesota has paid a lot of attention to over the years. And again, in our World's Best Workforce Plan, we wanted to, and we have as a goal, to increase the 5-year graduation rate. And I'll ask you to talk about that in a little bit, Jeremy, but to increase our 5-year graduation rate from Marshall High School, as it shows here, from just less than 93% up to 95%. The result for that was we saw a decrease. We saw it go down to 85.6%. That's a group of students, so we know that that can go up or down in any particular year. But again, that indicates that we have some work left to do. We're aware of that. Second part of this goal, sort of another subpart, if you will, was to increase our graduation rate at Maytech, this being the 6-year graduation rate from about 54% up to 58%. And we saw almost an 83% graduation rate using the 6-year measurement at Maytech. So we feel good about that. Talk briefly about 4, 5, 6, and even 7-year rates, Jeremy, because most of us, maybe outside of education, think, well, every student should graduate in 4 years. Right. That doesn't happen. What are some reasons why, and why would we take a look at the 5, 6, and 7-year rates?
Right. So there's a number of reasons a student might not graduate in 4 years. 4-year rate is one of the measures we look at that MDE measures, and it's certainly something we consider. But like you mentioned, there's a 5-year, 6-year, and a 7-year rate as well. For students that, we have a number of students who enter high school with no previous schooling. So realistically, 4 years probably isn't going to be enough to reach graduation, meaning because it's the same graduation requirements for every student. Right. So Marshall High School diploma means they've met all those same requirements. Yep. A student coming in at 16 years old who's never been in school before, it's going to take a little bit longer. So we look at that 4-year rate. It's the number of students that from the time they entered as a freshman, in 4 years they've graduated. Then we look at our 7-year rate is the other one that some of our systems will measure. So the students that enter as a freshman within 7 years, have they now graduated? Mm-hmm. And it's encouraging to see those 7-year numbers. We have a lot of students who are coming in with a non-traditional start to high school. So when we watch those additional years, like this happens because 6-year for Maytech, those numbers are higher, so that our students are graduating, maybe not in 4 years all the time, but it's for a number of different reasons that could be.
And I think it's important what you just said, Jeremy, many of the points, but ultimately we want them all to graduate. Right. We'd love for every student to graduate in 4 years, but there are situations and circumstances that make that difficult. But we still want them to graduate, and I don't have the numbers or recall them right off the top of my head, but I know the majority of our 6 and 7-year rates for the school district are up in the 90% right. or higher, and that's really what we're shooting for. But we are targeting a couple specific goals using the 5 and 6-year rates in our World's Best Workforce Plan. So kind of mixed results for that, but we know, again, that there's some things that we can build off of. And then the last goal for World's Best Workforce is career and college readiness. That's been a really good push, I think, state and nationwide. We always want our students to have the opportunity to go to college or some post-secondary, but we also recognize, and we've talked about this a lot, that there are many career opportunities in Marshall and in the surrounding communities and regions. So really, that's where the career readiness becomes more important. So what we do, we offer ramp up to readiness at the high school for all of our 9th through 12th grade students. Have we been doing that now, Jeremy? I want to say for 5, 6, 7, maybe even more years.
6 or 7 years, I think we've had that at high school. Yeah.
And so we kind of incorporate that. We incorporate that into just a normal day or week. We have some other things going on, but one of the ways that we measure this is we ask our students through a survey, and you can see here what it says. Does the ramp up to readiness opportunities that you're participating in, do they help you to explore what careers you might be good at? Use those student survey results. Again, our goal was 73% of the students said yes. Almost 79% of the students agreed with that. So we met that goal. Second question was, does Ramp Up help you understand how to make plans for life after high school, kind of that post-secondary plan? Mm-hmm. And again, we're shooting for a little less than 80%, and we're over 84% of the students that agreed with that. So positive things going on there. Maybe in the future we'll be able to come on this show and talk about some of the things that you've been working on relative to career and college readiness, mm-hmm. kind of an overlap with those, but I know there's some things going on behind the scenes that are real positive that we can talk about. Anything to add to this, Jeremy?
I'll just say with this one, what's kind of exciting that I see, is coming from the elementary the last few years, all the work that our middle school is even doing towards college and career readiness, doing a lot of career exploration and talking about future options and stuff for kids so they as they're considering high school courses. There's so many different options for kids, and our 7th and 8th graders in particular, they're doing a lot of work at that level too towards this goal.
And that's just been recently. I mean, I know there's always been some things happening, but we've really focused on that. I think Mary Kay Thomas and Peter Thor and the counselors and the staff at the middle school have done a really nice job of recognizing that this is a focus for the state through World's Best Workforce and other things. And if we can sort of trickle that into the middle school and get our students to start thinking about their future, that's a positive thing. And like you said, if I can kind of have a sense as an 8th grader that I want to be a doctor, it's easier for our counselors to steer me towards science classes. Whereas if I wait, like back in our day, till maybe 10th, 11th, or even 12th grade to decide what career path I'm going to pursue, it's harder to get into those or make up those science courses. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Really good point. We're going to shift gears a little bit here, Jeremy, to achievement and integration. We do have a plan for that. We are a part of the Southwest Collaborative, Achievement and Integration Collaborative, with, I think there's 6 or 7 other school districts, and we meet to talk about the goals for our collaborative, so all of our students together, but we also have our own plans. Achievement and Integration has 2 goals, and you can see those: to reduce disparities in academic achievement among all students and specific categories of students. We just talked about how we look at so many subgroups of students, so it's very applicable to that. And then also the second goal is to increase racial and economic integration, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I know this is a little bit new to you, Jeremy, so I'll just kind of, again, let you kind of jump in wherever you feel comfortable, but I've been around this for 5 or 6 years and certainly don't know all I need to, but hopefully I'm getting there. So our first goal in our Achievement and Integration Plan, and our Achievement and Integration Plan started in 2017, and this is the last year of our current 3-year plan. But our goal was to basically reduce the achievement gap, again, between white and non-white students. This time it's by taking a look at all state accountability tests. We had a conversation about that earlier, the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, but then there's the MTAS and some access and things like that. So all state accountability tests, and by the end of this year, we want to reduce that gap between white and non-white down to 25%. Now, this is where it maybe gets a little confusing. We're not there yet. This last year in 2018-19, it was 28.5%. So we haven't met the goal yet, but when we sort of plotted that out and said by the end of the 18-19 school year, we want to be at this percent, and we're there. So hopefully we're on our way. It's a 3-year goal essentially, and it's difficult to measure, hence the thumbs down, but yet we're on track if things continue to go well. So anything you want to add about this that we haven't already talked about?
You really covered it. It's really looking at, like we talked about, measuring growth within our students. This is looking at the growth piece too, not just focused on the final end of 3-year results. And really, there's a lot of alignment between these goals and the World's Best Workforce Plan as well. So.
Yep. Yeah. And you've done some really good work with that. Similar plan in the Achievement and Integration Plan, or a similar goal, is to graduate all students. This time we're focusing on the graduation rates in our Achievement and Integration Plan for our Black students and our Hispanic students, trying to increase those from 54.5% to almost 61% for our Black students, and from 57% to 63% for our Hispanic students. We didn't see that. This is where we're using the 4-year graduation rate, which is something we need to talk about, because we do know that there are a number of students coming to Marshall and enrolling in their first formal education system. So that's something we want to talk about. But again, we have measurements. We know what we can build off of. We have an idea of what's worked well and what hasn't worked well. And we'll continue to move forward with that. And again, we have 1 more year, and then we'll rewrite our plan for 2020 through 2023.
Right.
In order to increase integration of students in So in our district and in our collaborative, we have two activities. One is a sort of a pre-ACT prep day that we hold here at SMSU for all of the junior students in the collaborative school districts. I want to say we bring in almost 400 juniors from our neighboring schools, and from Marshall, we have our teachers teach sort of mini classes that are related to ACT prep. Our goal collaboratively with all of our other school districts is to increase the composite ACT score up to 23, and we were a little bit short last year. We were at 22.1. Our second goal was basically a student satisfaction goal to have the students say ACT prep day was valuable for me. We wanted at least 85% of the students to indicate that, and 87% of them did, so that's a positive. The second thing relative to integration that we've set as a collaborative goal is to work with our post-secondary institutions in this region, Minnesota West and Southwest Minnesota State, and offer summer classes where our students could earn college credits. 2 summers ago, we had enough interest where we were able to offer those classes, and I think we had maybe 10 students who earned college credits. This last summer, for whatever reason, there was not enough interest among all of our students, all of our incoming seniors and juniors, to offer any summer classes. So we didn't meet that goal, but we're really working hard, and I think we've identified through some student feedback 2 classes that we can offer this coming summer, so we'll start planning for that now.
Right.
Next steps, Jeremy, can you talk about these a little bit? Because oftentimes we do a report and then it's kind of like, well, okay, we've reported, we're done, but we have some follow-up to do.
Right, and you mentioned earlier just the alignment with our school improvement plan, so a lot of work going on there, that each site has individual goals related to this, so we can measure growth, and everyone's working on the same thing. We have a summary report that we're putting together right now that goes to MDE, looking at how we did last year, what our results were, talking about some feedback we get from MDE and how they're going to give us some advice on how our goals are looking and results, and maybe some help in areas we struggle with. Implementing a new plan, so updating goals for this year and going forward. You mentioned earlier a public meeting that'll be coming up sometime in November, December. That meeting will be announced coming soon. And then finishing out the A&I plan, those last couple goals, and setting a new plan for the next 3 years with the area districts on that one we work together. And really continually reviewing our results and looking at what were successes, things we want to continue, what are some things that we need to continue to work on and make some changes. So a lot of work still going on.
Seems like there's always a lot of work going on, but yeah, we sort of do this, let's look back at last year, here are the results. We get some feedback from the Department of Education. We put together a report that gets sent to them for both of these plans, and then we pull everybody together and say, okay, where do we go from here? We did well in this area, but not so well in this, and how can we tweak maybe our goal or our action steps to do even better? So, Jeremy, thank you for taking the time to talk about World's Best Workforce and achievement and integration. I appreciate the work you're doing. Like you said, there's still a lot of work left to do, but most of it goes on behind the scenes, and hopefully we'll get some people at our public meeting and get that word out here in November and December. So for Jeremy Williams, Director of Teaching and Learning in our district, again, I'm Scott Munson, Superintendent of Schools. If you have any questions about not just the World's Best Workforce or Achievement and Integration Plan, but anything related to our school district, feel free to call one of us in the district office, 537-6924. Email us. Our email addresses are available on our website, which is www.marshall.k12.mn.us. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen to us, and have a great day.
Thank you.